else used.
Right.
So they go back and they go, oh, you this.
January 16, 2025. The world was still in shock after the Netflix
My mom, she got killed when I was 8 years old. I had to live with them full time and I went and stayed with them.
four-part documentary that included destroyed the kingdom of Sean Combs when the announcement was made. Social media feeds became frozen. The number of notifications surged. The name that has dominated news reports for months returned, but this time with a twist that no one anticipated. Curtis 50 Cent Jackson, the individual who had previously ripped down the outside of one of hip-hop's greatest strong moguls, were prepared to carry it out once more. However, this has nothing to do with Diddy. No longer. This has to do with the woman who created him. It concerned Janice Combs, and the world was unprepared for what struck after that. The initial documentary was a reckoning. The second would be a revelation. Within Netflix's main office, executives gathered in front of screens, seeing the rise in population as the announcement went viral throughout all platforms. In a matter of minutes, Season 2 started to become popular all around the world. In a few hours, the legal team for the Combs family was mobilizing, because of what 50 Cent possessed, just declared, wasn't simply another documentary. It was an excavation of the actual foundation, a thorough examination of the matriarch whose impact had molded the guy now seated in a federal institution, deprived of everything he had under control. Prior to delving further into this startling chapter is being rewritten everything we believe to be true about the Make Sure You Enjoy This Combs Dynasty video. Sign up for the channel, and press the bell symbol to ensure you never miss an update on this evolving narrative. Now let's return to it. The environment is December 2025. A few weeks following the Sean Combs' first season, shockwaves were delivered through the entertainment sector. The four-part series had been harsh, unforgiving, and Diddy's solicitors claimed that a disgraceful hit piece. However, it had accomplished something extraordinary. Using unanticipated video that Combs had commissioned, 50 Cent had transformed Diddy's personal account of his life into proof of his demise. The irony was suffocating. The individual who had spent decades in charge of his story, who had hired videographers to record each time in his meticulously constructed kingdom, have seen the same video turn into the foundation for his demise. Within the series, viewers had seen something relaxing. Days prior to his September 2024 arrest, Combs was seen on camera making phone calls, managing business, projecting assurance. In a situation where became notorious right away, he informed his Dana Tran, his girlfriend, about to move 200 at this time, and it felt nice that they are keeping the door open for him. He was included in a documentary, shaking hands with admirers in Harlem, subsequently declaring that he required assistance, sanitizer, and a bath, because he'd been amid the people in the streets. These scenes, intended to depict a powerful magnate, instead showed a man fumbling as the walls shut. However, this was only the starting. The legal dispute over the video had been ferocious. Combs' lawyers had issued Netflix a cease and desist letter, stating that years' worth of information had been stolen, on which the documentary depended, stuff that Combs had commissioned and kept without allowing distribution rights. They contended that it would comprise privileged exchanges between Combs and his solicitors. Netflix and Alexandria Stapleton, the director, was sacked back right away, claiming all materials were approved by law and obtained. Then it was discovered that altered everything. Diddy's Rob Shooter, a former publicist, revealed a shocking: his podcast is pleasant but dirty. Permit me to, I'll share something personal with you. Encounter with Diddy. The shooter disclosed, what I've always known is now confirmed by sources. The cameraman was never compensated by Diddy, in charge of the pre-trial recordings. Not a single penny. Yet he had a agreement. The ramifications struck like a seismic event. The video that Diddy's group asserted was pilfered and never truly belonged to Diddy in any way. The filmmaker, underpaid and legally entitled to his labor, had given it to the documentary 50 Cent's group. Combs' renowned negligence with documents, something Sheward said he'd observed directly throughout his time employed by the billionaire, had returned to destroy him. The individual who had constructed and the empire had lost control of its image, of his own persona, via his own carelessness. As soon as word got out that the warnings from the law were baseless, that Netflix was fully entitled to utilize the 50 Cent was aware that he had more than just a successful documentary. He possessed a plan for a larger project. Within the manufacturing facilities where the reckoning had come together, discussions started to change in late November of 2025. The initial season had investigated the claims of sexual assault, the allegations about Tupac Shakur, the catastrophe at City College in 1991. The fees associated with Biggie's funeral to his property. It had created a portrait of a man whose quest for dominance had left deaths across several decades. The show had made its premiere on December 3, 2025. Every single of its 4 components, about 1 hour, in a matter of days, it became one of the most popular documentaries on Netflix. However, the production crew was aware that there were tales they hadn't pulled, threads they had not disclosed. Additionally, at the core of several one-person, Janice, languished in untold stories. Shaw's mother, Combs. The ambience in it was exciting to attend those production meetings. 50 Cent, who had been openly making fun of Diddy's demise, who had published diss songs in 2006 and kept making fun of him in interviews, saw a chance not only for vindication, but for stating the truth on a magnitude that would solidify his documentary credentials. His group had been taken aback, considering the amount of video that was available, how much Combs had even written about his own life. As the crisis worsened, they were in charge of the story in the first season by allowing Combs' own video is self-explanatory. For in season 2, they need a new strategy. They had to visit the source. The woman needs to be examined. Who had brought the man up? And after that everything was altered. December 6, 2025. While the concept for season 2 was still being developed, phases, Janice Comelams made a public statement declaration that echoed across media outlets. She was reacting to assertions made in the first season by former Kirk Burroughs, an associate who had claimed that following the terrible 1991 City 9, people were murdered in a college stampede, Sean had smacked his mother. Janice described the charge as blatantly untrue. She said that taking advantage of such a tragedy to draw attention to purported family abuse was unacceptable, egregious, and outdated. Offensive. She made a measured statement, but strong, highlighting important assertions in the incorrect documentary, and purposefully deceptive. The voice was injured, protecting, and defensive. However, it was also illuminating for 50 Cent and his group. Janice's words were a gift. It verified that the first season had achieved meant that the dynamics inside the family were more complicated and erratic than public perception shown. Additionally, it included a roadmap if Janice felt obliged to publicly defend herself if she thought she had been misled in the documentary. Connection with her kid. Then there was a tale there worth investigating. Meetings for production became more intense. Teams of researchers examined Janice's background, her influence on Sean's development, the demands of becoming a future mogul, the choices and sacrifices made in Harlem that had characterized their travels together. What they discovered was not straightforward. It was human, complex, and multilayered. The time it altered everything occurred when 50%. The choice was made by Cent. There would be a Janice Combs, and season 2 would be in the middle of it. The declaration about the 17th of December wasn't subtle. On the Instagram, images started to circulate that 50 Cent revealed information about the season 2 of Reckoning. This time, I concentrated especially on Diddy's mom. Though the reaction on social media was immediate and explosive, comments poured in from the thousands. Some were shocked, while others drama that was expected. Many people asked whether aimed at Diddy's aging mother transgressed a moral boundary. However, the V announcement was calculated. It arrived at a while Diddy was at his own lowest, when his options for legal action were declining, after his kingdom had crumbled. As of January 2026, Sean Combs was making asset sales. His personal matte black jet, the same plane he had captured on camera in July 2024. He boarded with the steps, have Combs' airplace, claiming that there was no place like home. 6 months following his federal conviction for October accusations pertaining to prostitution, he was liquidating 225, the trial that has used up 225 months since May. It had been terrible. Through June, Cassie was one of the witnesses who described Child Cudi, narrating his firebombing of an automobile. Testimony following testimonies, constructing a case that prosecutors said that 2 decades of threatening and using violence to coerce women. Diddy's defense team had contended that relationships were mutually agreed upon, that his life was distorted throughout the lawsuit. However, the decision was made on October 3, 2025. Down, convicted of 2 charges. For years been bars. January 2026, saw Combs make a desperate action. He sent a letter to President Trump is asking for a pardon. Trump, who has previously been cordial with Combs prior to the breakdown of their partnership despite disagreements over politics, told the New York Times at an interview he conducted no intention of granting the request. I was quite cordial with him. I got along with he was excellent and seems to be a pleasant man. Trump remarked. but he also mentioned Combs's critique of Trump's initial term complicated any potential clemency. The door had banged. No escape, no relief, no return. And Diddy was in federal jail when seeing his world fall apart. 50 Cent was constructing the second season. The Snort's manufacturing plan for the second installment differed from the first. Season 1 had profited from Combs' his own video, the uncut material from behind the scenes that revealed without a filter. He was in a predicament. The second season would necessitate in-depth study, interviews, discussions with individuals who were familiar with Janice, who recognized the dynamic between a mother and her son. The difficulty was persuading people to speak on camera. 50 Cent had tackled this issue in conversations regarding the first season. However, now, the stakes were higher. Criticizing Sean Combs, a convicted offender whose one's reputation had been ruined. Something. Analyzing his mother, a lady who, having spoken up for her family in public, was one more. Gasps. There was silence in the room when the interviewee consented to take part. Then one more. Then one more. Those who've been acquainted with the Combs family for decades, who had seen the Janice and Sean's relationship, they were aware of the demands and patterns, started to emerge. A few discussed Janice's resilience, her resolve to support her son in challenging conditions. Others made suggestions at intricacy, at a connection that was strong, domineering, informative in methods that are both beneficial and harmful. The story started to take form. This wouldn't be a popular song. This would be an analysis of how families produce the individuals who build empires, and how the seeds may be carried by those same families. Terrible devastation inside them. However, what everyone would be shocked by what occurred next. In late December of 2025, Diddy's sons Justin and Christian King Combs declared their own documentary initiative around the Zeus network. They would showcase their side of the tale, an alternative account to 50 Cent's Devastation series. The declaration was defiant, desperate, and protective. "Whoa, I'd want to watch this program." 50 Cent made a post on his signature eye emoji on Instagram, a mixture of jealousy and rivalry. The conflict was no longer solely about Diddy. It has to do with heritage and who controlled the narrative. Regarding whether the Combs family could rescue anything from the debris. Regarding 50 Cent, the proclamation of the rival, the documentary just confirmed his methodology. If the family felt obliged to reply, if they had to show their own version, it indicated that the reckoning has come. Reality that is painful enough. During interviews regarding the initial season, Jackson had outlined his reasons for the project. He had been taken aback by what the video was made public. He had desired to investigate how could someone get so high and then fall. Thus far, however, behind the justifications mentioned was a more straightforward kind of vindication. The 50 Cent and Diddy's dispute had spanned several decades, mostly one-sided, with Jackson making fun of Diddy's persona, music, and spirits brand, but Combs mostly disregarded any real hostility. However, that was earlier. The accusations, prior to the arrest, prior to 50 Cent being one of the most vociferous opponents of Combs' bad luck. The pivotal event in Season 2's early in January 2026, guidance was given. Documents found via research, interviews, trends that depicted Janice Combs as a hero rather than a villain, principal character in an ambitious tragedy. Sean had been shelved by her. She had safeguarded him. He had been made possible by her. She had cherished him with a blurry intensity limits. The production crew became aware they were not doing a documentary on blame. They were producing a documentary on the corruption of authority across generations, how trauma leads to trauma, how the desire for achievement can turn into the destructive force. You could hear breathing during meetings for manufacturing as these themes surfaced. You sensed the weight of what they were discovering. Diddy was no longer the only focus of this. This has to do with American achievement, what we give up in order to grow, about the price of constructing an empire, expressed in words used by humans. Executives at Netflix observed the fascinating early development and worry. The initial season had already produced legal challenges, the public reactions from the Combs family and huge audience, and further season concentrating on Janice ran the risk of escalating each of the three. However, the streaming platform had gained knowledge from the first season. They had protected their right to utilize the video legally. They had supported Stapleton and Jackson when Diddy's attorneys declared it an embarrassing hit song. They had also observed the figures. The reckoning had shown that viewers yearned for this type of documentary. Unwavering analyses of well-known individuals whose public personas concealed more sinister truths. The choice was produced. There would be a second season. However, This was just the discovery. The climax was still to come. Within the tension increased in the production offices as materials gathered. Each interview unveiled fresh layers. Each document discovered more intricacy. The image of Janice Combs that surfaced was neither a monster nor a saint, but something more concerning. A furious woman. Both were a result of her affection for her kid, his might and his ability to do damage. Former co-workers described how she had gave young Sean an unwavering conviction that he is unique, a belief that standard regulations didn't apply to him. She was characterized by others. Involvement in disputes. Her defense of her kid, even in protection, means making things possible. The pattern was obvious. Janice had been Sean's first and most devoted supporter-backer. The one who instructed him thought he could conquer every challenge through determination and strategic brutality. However, the production crew found sympathy as well. They discovered a lady. She has brought up a son amid difficult conditions, who had labored to offer chances, who had experienced love with the very fabric of her existence. They discovered intricacy that was difficult to judge. The second season of The Tightrope would stroll, honoring truth without damaging a lady whose worst transgression may have been adoring her son too much, too unconditionally, without sufficient limits. The atmosphere moved from combative to contemplative. This wouldn't be removed. This would be a contemplation of power, family, and results. As January 2026 went on, rumors regarding the release of Season 2 entertainment news websites were dominated by dates. Netflix said nothing, providing no formal declarations that go beyond recognizing that conversations were continuing. However, behind the scenes, production quickened. 50 Cent, who had demonstrated his ability to produce documentaries with The Reckoning and working at the same time on his BMF's second season documentary series, immersed himself in the undertaking. He was aware that Season 2 had a different weight than the first season. The first season had focused on exposure, about disclosing Diddy's concealed. The second would be about explanation, regarding comprehending how someone gains the ability to do the Diddy was found guilty of the crime. The quiet seemed oppressive as production specifics were kept under wraps. There were very few leaks. The group had discovered from the court cases in Season 1 to maintain information secure until it is made public. But the excitement was growing. Social media buzzing with hypotheses, forecasts, requests for information on when the documentary would be released. The Combs family's Zeus counter-documentary increased the level of expectancy. Two conflicting stories, two iterations of the same narrative would shortly clash in the public awareness. The scene was prepared for a conflict over legacy that would enthrall millions of people. Next, the reality surfaced regarding what Season 2 might truly see beyond Janice, beyond familial relationships. The documentary would look at a more general question. How does American culture both creates and destroys its icons? How can we help individuals become godlike status before devouring them when they tumble? The group responsible for production discovered they had wandered into anything more than a tale of a family. They have discovered a prism through which to examine masculinity, power, celebrity, and responsibility in contemporary America. Diddy turned into a case study, Janice turned into an emblem of the forces that mold us, and the unexpected documentarian, 50 Cent, become the storyteller of a tale about ashes and empire. What individuals observed wasn't yet one more celebrity documentary in the creation. What they saw was a cultural moment, a recognition that goes beyond for Sean Combs, but for a whole industry that has turned its back on decades. The proof presented during the season had already sparked discussions regarding collusion and who was aware of what and when, regarding protective systems, powerful guys at the victim's cost. The second season would push those further discussions, inquiring as to how families and cultures produce the circumstances that encourage abuse, the moment that encapsulated everything.